My name's Kit and I'm a movie buff. I will be reviewing Netflix's original movie, Outside the Wire. And yes, there will be spoilers. TLDR, this is not a very good movie. There is some decent action, but without a good story and a good characters supporting the action, it just leaves you uninvolved. The movie does try to ask like big questions about artificial intelligence and ethics of using drones in warfare, but it's not really thought through properly, and it's kind of shallow and disjointed. It's this normal problem where the drama feels forced. It's like they want to have this like dramatic situation or emotional response from the audience, so they just throw in some situation, but it doesn't make sense. Okay, let's look at the basic premise. This is the near future. So you've got robot soldiers called Gumps. America is on a peacekeeping mission in Ukraine. You've got this disgraced drone pilot called Harp, who disobeyed orders and fired a Maverick missile from the drone he was operating. He was back in the continental United States, and he was operating the drone over Ukraine. And because he fired the missile, 2 American soldiers were killed. And he did that against the orders of his commanding officer back in the US, in the drone command center, and also against the platoon lieutenant in the field. And so this disobedient drone pilot is sent into the field, to Ukraine, to the very platoon where this incident occurred is based, which is, yeah, sure, that's a great idea, in order to teach him a lesson. Drone pilots are not combat infantrymen, okay, in the first place. So this is like one of the many military inaccuracies in the movie. I've got a whole list on my phone here, which I will be going through shortly. And there, he is assigned to Leo, who is an android, a robot with artificial intelligence. And Leo's mission is to stop a rebel leader from getting hold of Ukraine's nuclear weapons. So it just doesn't work. I mean, come on. First of all, there's a big jump between the intelligence level of the robotic Gump soldiers that are in widespread use, and Leo, who passes the Turing test. He looks completely human, not just human, but above average in intelligence and drive and physicality. So he's like a superior human in every way. So we don't see any intermediate robots or androids between him and the Gumps. He's just this like sudden leap in advanced technology. And the thing is, why the gums make sense, right? You don't want human soldiers being shot at on the battlefield. But why would you have something as advanced as Leo, which you don't trust? You put in some kind of mechanisms in case he gets out of control, and you put only him and his assistant Harp on this really critical mission to stop a rebel leader from getting his hands on nukes. This is like the only team doing it. And the thing is, because they make such basic military mistakes, there's a bit of a twist at the end where you realize that Leo has his own agenda and he's been lying to Harp. But the way it was presented at the start, it just looks like another story error by the writers, similar to the military inaccuracies. So Brandon Sanderson says that if there is something in your story that doesn't make sense, but you know it doesn't make sense, you need to highlight to the audience that it doesn't make sense, and you as the storyteller realizes it. So to tell the audience it's not a mistake. It sounds funny, but I know, and I will explain later. He calls it hanging a lantern on it. This wasn't done. So it just didn't make sense that Leo would go out of his way to actually hire Harp, someone who has been disciplined for disobeying orders. Leo's explanation, his initial explanation, is that he wants Harp because he wants someone who can think out of the box to look after his back. But then after that he keeps on complaining because Harp keeps on questioning him, keeps on asking questions. So he got what he wanted, but he didn't want it. So the basic premise doesn't make sense. That first of all, you have this suddenly super intelligent, superhuman android that is so far advanced above any robot that the general public and the general army soldiers have known. And then he is the only one sent to stop this nuclear weapon threat. Whereas if you know anything about US foreign policy or military strategy, you would know that the one thing that they are really afraid of is nuclear weapons. So any kind of immediate nuclear weapon threat, they will go all out. And according to a movie, the Ukraine has a functioning nuclear ICBMs capable of hitting the United States, left over from the Cold War, which is not true. And you know it's not true because that's why Russia in real life dared to invade the Ukraine, and the Ukraine gave up its nuclear weapons after the fall of the Soviet Union, partly because America gave Ukraine a security guarantee, which America did not honor when Russia invaded Ukraine. That would be like my summary of the movie. So now let me go through in detail the military and plot issues I had with this movie. I'll be reading from my phone here. So yeah, if you don't need the details, yeah, you can stop watching now. Even the name doesn't make sense. Outside the wire. The wire is the camp perimeter, the barbed wire. And this started from at least the Vietnam War. And outside the wire implies that there's a differentiation between the base, which is safe inside the wire, and then going out to patrol outside the wire. But there's no such, or there's very little of such a thing in the movie. They don't really go into like life on the base, like in the green zone in Baghdad. Comparing it to like life outside the base. So the title is meaningless. And it starts off with a voiceover explaining the situation, the war in the Ukraine, and the Gumps as the robotic soldiers. That's usually a bad sign. If you have to have some kind of narration at the start of the movie explaining the background, chances are the movie isn't very good. It already shows that the director doesn't know much about storytelling, because it's better to have the story unfold and for the audience to try and figure out what's going on. Just start in the middle of the story, don't explain. In media res, that's the technical term. Okay, then they talk about an APC, an armored personnel carrier, instead of an IFV, an infantry fighting vehicle. The US Army has already switched over mainly to IFVs. The APC, like the M113 used in Vietnam, that just carries soldiers, but it's not really used for fighting. That doesn't have much offensive capability. So the IFVs, like the M2 Bradley, they have more firepower. They've got cannon, and they are designed to put up more of a fight. So yeah, that's this really weird thing. It really shows like the writers don't know what they're talking about. And in the end credits, I didn't see any military consultant, so they didn't bother to run their story through military fact checker. And yeah, the thing about an IV and IAFV is that like the situation at the start where you've got troops in trouble, their APC is just sitting there, whereas why doesn't it just move forward to rescue those men? They were only taking like small arms fire. And now for the drone, the UAV that HARP was controlling. And UAVs are not used by the US military for this kind of like close air support, close combat support. That would be more things like the Apache helicopter, the A-10 Warthog, maybe even the AC-130 gunship. Drones are actually used more for reconnaissance. They do have offensive capability, as mentioned in the movie, usually in the form of Maverick missiles. But the Maverick missile only has a 20-pound explosive warhead, which is very small. Like the smallest bomb that the US Air Force regularly uses is a 500-pound bomb. The American drones usually are not equipped with like machine guns, which the A-10, the Apache helicopter, the C-130 are. So yeah, drones are just not used for that. And the way close air support works in the US military is that you're supporting the troops on the ground. So they will tell you where to shoot, what kind of support that they need, where the danger is. You don't go and tell them. You definitely do not override their command to not fire. Harp got into trouble for it, but for him to do that is just totally out of character. I mean, it's not even borderline something that a drone pilot would do. I mean, their whole history, their whole culture would not allow it. So it's not believable. But the movie was trying to do this moral questioning of the use of drones. Like they had Harp like just munching on snacks, enjoying himself thousands of miles away, while the troops were taking fire on the ground and in danger. So it was like so obvious, so morally preachy, and it didn't make sense. So so right from the start, you know that this movie doesn't know what it's talking about. I'm not going to take it seriously. Okay, so like other minor things, just the terminology, the use of language. Leo talks about going outside the base as going into a war zone, as if the base itself was not in a war zone. My understanding is that that's not how the terminology is used. So the entire area there would be considered a war zone. The Gump designs were good, the robotic soldiers. Not much thought seems to have gone into like how they were deployed, how they would be used with the other soldiers. Like, we don't know who's controlling them. Are they like autonomous? Do they have an individual operator like a drone operator? A test of a story element is like, if you take it out, would it affect the story? So if you took the Gumps out of the movie, would it affect the story? No. If you took Harp out of the story, would it affect the story? Also no. It was like they were just trying to have this kind of this comment, this moral philosophy about drone use, and then Harp learning something, but it just doesn't work. So they should have concentrated on one thing, on this mission, perhaps separate, without all this AI robotic stuff. That might have worked, but they didn't. They just tried to throw in all these things together without really understanding or developing them, And yeah, so you just get this really shallow, confusing, amateurish exploration of these issues. It's also a bit weird when they talk about the Marines. It's not clear whether they're Army or Marines. I think they're Army. But Leo says that he was with MASOC, Marines Special Operations. So is he a Marine? And then when they get into trouble, Harp radios back to base and tells them to send in the Marines. I don't think the Army calls in the Marines for help. So the writers just don't know anything about the way the US military works. So halfway through the movie, Leo asks Harp to ditch his uniform. So they're running around in a combat zone without military uniforms, which means they are spies. And will not be accorded Geneva Convention protections. And Harp doesn't blink an eye, he just does it. Okay. Why would Leo be given officer status? I think he's a captain, and given the authority to command human soldiers. Okay, then they are in this convoy, and then they get the call over the radio that 8 truck has been hit, so they go over to help, but they are near enough to go and help, but they are not near enough to hear the explosions or gunfire when the 8 truck was hit. There's one part where Harp says that he broke the chain of command. He didn't break the chain of command, he just disobeyed an order. There's an orphanage, and there are gumps there, maybe protecting the orphanage, but also playing basketball with the children. And so the rebels, instead of using gumps to fight, they use them to entertain kids at the orphanage. That's quite a misuse of such a valuable military asset. So they meet this lady, Sophia, at the orphanage, and she tells Harp that the orphans were created by him, by his drone strikes. Sophia has this very strong British accent, but never mind. Oh well, she's actually a British actress. But to say that drones created the orphans is really a misunderstanding of how the US military fights. Because yeah, like I mentioned earlier, their Maverick missiles, which is their main armament, only has a 20-pound warhead. So the majority of the firepower that the US military has, especially when they're fully deployed overseas with a base and everything, will not come from the drones. So this kind of shows like the writers are just getting their impressions from news reports. Oh, drone strike in Pakistan killed a wedding party or something. Yeah, the majority of casualties when the US military has bases in country will not be coming from drones. And drones are relatively precision strike. So even though the collateral damage, the civilian casualties caused by a drone strike do make the headlines, they are actually a relatively small number, and combat soldiers on the ground would be more indiscriminate. One thing, they have more firepower. There are more of them, and they're also more nervous because their lives are on the line, whereas the drone pilot is not in any danger, so he's not going to make any rash decisions because he's afraid of getting killed. Yeah, so it's really, the writers don't know what they're talking about. They're trying to do some kind of morality play about the ethics of drone use, and they just totally missed the mark. Okay, the bad guy buys some weapons, especially Russian model guns from an arms dealer, and so the good guys catch up with the arms dealer and ask him where the bad guy is. Why would the arms dealer know where the bad guy is? Why would the bad guy tell him? Why would the arms dealer want to know? And then after suffering through half the movie, wondering why a drone pilot is being sent into a combat zone as an infantry man, then suddenly Leo brings up the fact that as a drone pilot, Harp is an intelligence officer. And that's why he needs him there. But before that, there was no mention of it. So yeah, your impression is that yeah, he's there just as a combat soldier. So yeah, it's a bit of a twist. It does make a bit of sense. Not much, but yeah, but because of all the other military inaccuracies, and the fact that the writers did not hang a lantern on this misuse of Harp, you just think early on that this is another mistake by the writers. So by the time it's kind of sort of explained later on, yeah, you've already condemned the movie, and it's like too little too late. And there's this part where Sophia helps them in the fight against the arms dealer, and she kicks ass. It's just this stupid girl power thing that movies seem to think that they need to have. It just looks out of place. Yeah, and like what I said earlier about the movie not having a clear explanation of how gumps, these robotic soldiers, are used in combat. Suddenly, like after the shootout at the bank, you've got this armored vehicle full of friendly gums pull out, and the gums come out, and they don't have any humans with them, which we haven't seen before. And you also have Harp standing in the middle of the street, not taking cover. Okay, as far as he knows, there are no bad guys around. They've all been killed or all run away. But seriously, why would you be standing in the open in the middle of the street? It's mentioned that Eckhart doesn't really trust Leo, but then Eckhart, he's the colonel back in the base. He seems to be like one of the most senior officers around, and then suddenly on Leo's word to attack the bank, because the bad guy is there, Eckhart suddenly just believes him and says, yeah, okay, we're gonna destroy the bank with a drone, which again is some kind of lame attempt to link Harp's previous job as a drone operator to the carelessness of using drones in warfare. It just doesn't work. Then after the bank, there's this really strange thing where they start intercutting. They show the events after the fight at the bank, and then with Harp and Leo driving away in a car, and then they intercut it with flashbacks to what happened at the bank. So there was just no reason to do it this way, to have this flashback intercut, and it's just confusing. It's the only time it happened in the movie, and there's like no reason why they would do that. Yeah, so Leo goes rogue, and then he knocks out Harp, dumps Harp. Why? He blabbed everything to Harp. So Harp is like the only one who knows that Leo has gone rogue. So why would Leo leave him alive? There's no reason to believe that Leo suddenly cares for Harp. This was not built up at all. Yeah, and Leo says that the US wants the Ukraine to be messed up, to keep Russia in check, whereas actually it's the other way around. A strong and peaceful Ukraine would be a better check on Russia. So Ukraine actually gave up its nuclear weapons in real life. But okay, let's say they didn't. If they did not give up their nuclear weapons, why would they still be working decades? So now it's 2021, so that's 30 years after the end of the Cold War, and this movie is set in the near future, so let's say in 10 years in the future, so 40 years and the ICBMs are still working. They're still reliable. No. And Liu thinks that a nuclear strike on America would teach America a lesson, and Sophia also thinks so, and so America would not interfere in other countries like the Ukraine. Whereas history showed us that after 9/11, America got a lot more interventionist. The problem also with Leo going rogue is that it was not properly foreshadowed, so it just comes out of the blue. They don't show any hint, any indication that he's dissatisfied with US policy. So when it's suddenly revealed at the end, it's like, where did this come from? Harp calls his old colleague Bale back in the continental US. Bale is a drone pilot, and Harp just short circuits the chain of command and calls his friend Bale, and Bale agrees to help him, even though she knows that he got into trouble for disobeying a direct order. So why would Bale trust Harp, trust his judgment now? And Bale knows that, oh, there's a global hawk nearby, and then she just takes over control of it and uses it to help Harp. I don't think you can just suddenly take over any any drone that you like that. You are assigned one drone to fly, and that's it. All the pilots, all the officers working with Bale, they are suddenly on board with this mission, even though they didn't receive any official sanction for it. Yeah, and then near the end, the final showdown between Leo and Harp, I think Colonel Eckhart radios Harp and asks him to confirm that only Leo will be taken out. It's like, what? Eckhart was willing to drone an entire bank just to kill the bad guy, not caring if there were any civilians, not caring that Leo is inside, and then suddenly he's telling Harp to make sure that only Leo gets killed. It's again trying to. It's like he's learned this lesson about collateral damage and drones. Yeah, in the end, they just have one missile strike to destroy an entire factory where 4 ICBM silos are hiding. That's my review of the movie. That's my nitpick. I hope it was entertaining and that you learned something from it.